Miami Dolphins are set to host the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football, a rematch from a critical Dolphins loss last season. What do you have to look forward to? We have you covered here with a crossover Thursday episode here on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Thursday here on the Locked On Network, and that means it is time for a crossover. Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins with Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans, and we are getting ready for Monday Night Football, a rematch of a Monday Night Football game from last year, and a couple of teams off to a slow start. I think with some big-time questions, and you're kind of meeting that point of the season where things can really start to tip in a bad way, or you can get the ship righted and get things figured out. So, Tyler, we have this crossover, which is presented by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL in all lowercase to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Tyler, how's it going? And what are the biggest questions right now in Nashville around the Titans?
Well, Kyle, it's going about as good as it can go for being 0-3 and seeing your quarterback, your offensive line, your best defensive player, give the game, your special teams units, give the game away every single week. Despite all of that, I think the biggest story for the Titans is the offensive line now. It was Will Levis for the first few weeks, and Will Levis continues to make big critical mistakes and big moments that hurt the team. But realistically, the biggest problem is that Will Levis is under constant pressure. Once again, the Titans are one of the worst offensive lines in pass protection in the NFL. Brian Callahan has kind of gone away from the run in certain games too, which maybe makes it a little bit worse, but there is a battle right now at right tackle between Nicholas Petit-Frere and Jalen Duncan. And what I would reference is, you know, the meme where it's two sides of the train and one person's looking out of the train and it's sunshine and the other person's looking at the wall and it's all dark and gloomy. Okay, well, the Titans train is just both dark and gloomy sides. You have Jalen Duncan and NPF, Nicholas Petit-Frere, on either side, and it doesn't matter. It's doom and gloom. So I think right now the big story is, can this offensive line even be okay? Like, just not god awful is really what the question is. And I say the offensive line because it's easier to say that, but realistically, JC Latham has looked solid throughout the first 3 weeks of the season. He had a bad week one against the speedy Darrell Taylor, but he's been pretty solid. And Peter Skoronski's had his ups and downs, but he's been pretty good. And Brian Callahan has echoed that sentiment. Lloyd Cushenberry is solid at center. But that right side of the offensive line, specifically right tackle with Nicholas Petit-Frere, and then they threw in Jalen Duncan last week, which I think it's worse and worse. You know, like, Jalen Duncan isn't any better than Nicholas Petit-Frere. He's worse. So there is no real answer. The question is, can those guys step up their game a little bit? I don't think that there's going to be some massive jump here. People say it takes time for things to come together, all of that, but there is no massive jump coming in talent and skill from Nicholas Petit-Frere. He's not a starting NFL offensive tackle, but can he at least just get to slightly below average, maybe even okay, to give Will Levis an opportunity to operate an offense and not just completely destroy any semblance of a passing game for the Titans? So I think while Will Levis is obviously, from the Miami Dolphins perspective, Miami fans are going to be like, Will Levis, you know, let's see what's up there. But really, Will Levis from a clean pocket has proven that he's a pretty solid quarterback. Now, I would say, and as you know, Kyle, that quarterbacks have to find a way to work outside of clean pocket situations. That's what is the test of a good quarterback. A lot of these guys would be really great if they had clean pockets all the time. But I have faith that Will Levis can be okay, but he's not going to be okay if the right side of the offensive line gets absolutely dismantled like they did against the Packers.
Yeah, and that's an interesting development coming into a game where Miami played a third-string right tackle in Stone Forsythe and couldn't really heat up Geno Smith the way that maybe you thought that they would. Now, they had pressure throughout the course of the game. They forced some mistakes from Geno, had a couple of interceptions on disruptive plays within the pocket. But that storyline with Miami, Bradley Chubb still on the PUP list from recovering from an end-of-season ACL tear. Jalen Phillips kind of working his way up in snap volume. He was up around 70% in week 3 as far as snaps taken. That's a big matchup for this game for sure. What about You mentioned special teams with the block punts the first couple of weeks. What about defensively for Tennessee? Obviously, they spent a ton and they invested a lot of resources on that side of the ball. How is it coming together, and what's been the biggest sticking point for them so far on that side of the ball?
Well, honestly, it's weird, Kyle. I don't have like hard-hitting analysis because it's just strange. The Titans defense was pretty solid the first 2 weeks. They did a pretty good job, and the offense and the special teams really put them in a bad spot. But the defense generally did their job. But last week against the Packers, it was like, the dam broke a little bit, and the Packers were able to get going in the run game. And the Titans had the Packers in so many third and long situations, and third and very long situations, like 3rd and 18, 3rd and 15. And because they're unable to get any pressure on the quarterback, guys just have so long back there, and the defensive backs can't hold up. So it was a strange situation where the defense let them down more than they had the first 2 weeks. And a lot of it did have to do with tackling. The Titans defense just didn't tackle. And I hate to psychoanalyze, people who I don't know directly, but at some point, I think you look at it and the defense kind of loses a little bit of hope because the offense is so bad. And they're like, am I going to go out there and get destroyed? And can I make this tackle? Am I going to hold on for dear life when I really don't think we have a chance to win because the offense isn't going to produce anything? The Titans have scored over 20 points or more only 6 times in like the last 24 games. So when you know that on defense, I think it kind of breaks your spirit. And when you break your spirit, you lose the physical edge of the game. So for me, it's, can this defense get back to being confident regardless of what the offense is doing? And I mean, from the Dolphins' perspective, for me, looking at the Titans defense, you can't let the Dolphins make explosive plays down the field. You got to keep everything short. You have to tackle. You have to hold the Dolphins down and make them 13-play, 12-play, 10-play drive with backup quarterbacks and show precision. If you let Tyreek Hill and Jalen Watt and these guys, the speed of the Miami Dolphins, Devin Achane, if you let them have big explosive plays like you let the Packers have last week, it doesn't matter what you do on a down-to-down basis because the chunks are going to be too hard to overcome. So for me, can the defense get their physical edge back and their confidence back regardless of what the offense is doing?
It sounds very familiar to Dolphins fans, or at least it should, because the game against Seattle, you blink and you're down 14. It's 17-3, and the defense holds and holds and holds. They set you up on some short fields, and you have a turnover on downs inside the 10-yard line. They go 93 yards and score a touchdown midway through the fourth quarter. And it's just the levee breaks because you can only keep that intensity up without having that complementary element of the game. So, any other stories for Tennessee? Any injuries that we need to be mindful of on either side of the ball, or anything from a special teams layer? Obviously, there's been some big plays there, but what's the kind of the last lens to look through Tennessee at as we get ready to shift gears and go towards Miami?
Well, I think the special teams is coming together. Honestly, the special teams blunders were individual mistakes. Jack Gibbons, a guy who was a starting linebacker last year, he missed a blocking assignment in week 1. And then week 2, Julius Chestnut, the Titans' 3rd-string running back, who should not be playing special teams. Ran Carthon made a major mistake letting Hassan Haskins go. Haskins is one of the better special teams players that the Titans have had in years. You let him go because Chestnut is a better runner of the football, but then you have Chestnut playing special teams, and the Jets rush 4 against 8 and block a punt. It's just completely unacceptable stuff. So I think the Titans are cleaning that stuff up, and that's not as big of a worry. But from an injury standpoint, Chidobe Awuzie, the Titans starting cornerback, is going to go on IR with a groin injury, and that is going to hoist rookie Jarvis Brownlee Jr. out of Louisville, who I'm sure you're familiar with. That's going to hoist him into a starting role. He's had some struggles when he's been asked to come into the lineup, but I like him overall as a player and what he can be. But when you have him going against a talented wide receiver group, that could be dangerous. So I would look for the Titans' backup cornerback, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., being a starter. If I'm Miami, I'm looking at that and saying, we got to find a way to attack him. So how he performs, I think, is kind of one of the big stories within the bigger stories.
So we're going to shift gears and look at the Dolphins next. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of availability questions for Miami. There's the offense going up in smoke and disappearing. And that kind of started last year with this exact game in primetime with a couple of changes to the Dolphins over the offseason, not necessarily bearing fruit for Miami. We're going to look at that next here on this Crossover Thursday. Make sure that you stick with us. Say you spontaneously want to head down to Hard Rock Stadium on Monday night. The Dolphins hosting the Titans for an AFC clash in Week 4. You can get your tickets through Game Time. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. It allows you to very easily view the stadium. I love how it gives you sight lines, so you could see exactly what kind of view you're signing yourself up for in your seats before you commit to tickets. Game Time also has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. It filters out the fluff and only shows you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And they also have all-in pricing. You can toggle that on, so when you put the tickets into your cart, there's no surprise fees waiting for you. You know exactly the dollar amount that you're signing up for. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And it is time for us here on Crossover Thursday to look at the Miami Dolphins. And the big storyline is who's playing quarterback.
Yeah. They got to go with Tyler Huntley, right? It's got to be Snoop.
I would expect that it is Tyler Huntley in this game. You get an extra day. You know, Huntley was kind of late coming on once the Tagovailoa injury happened. So the game against Seattle was about a week. Now you get from Sunday to Monday, so you get a little extra runway. And you've seen across the league, teams are able to piece together some kind of a unique game plan in a couple of weeks, right? And you see what the Packers, who Titans fans had a chance to experience, a newly additioned quarterback that you kind of change some of your pillars of what you are offensively to accommodate that player. And you can put them in good positions to be successful enough that it gives you a chance to win a football game. And I think just the week 3 turnaround was probably too short for Tyler Huntley in that regard. But the super discouraging thing for Dolphins fans on that front is Skylar Thompson's been here for 3 years. This is year 3 in the system. He had to start games when Tua dealt with the concussion issues back in 2022. He started the playoff game. Miami lost by 3, but frankly, Thompson had very little to do with that fact. They make the backup decision. They part ways with Mike White, who did not have a good preseason. And Skylar Thompson get a chance to play, and he gets himself hurt based off of not even executing like the core principles of the offense. There's reads that are open that you're not throwing to. And Mike McDaniel really called this game like he had to at quarterback. And I think that's a pretty jarring reality check for Miami, because the thought process presumably is, well, he's been here for 3 years. It's the system. I'll call the plays. We'll push the right buttons, and he understands it because he's been here for 3 years and it'll work out. And that couldn't have been further from the truth. Like basic in-breaking routes is the first read into that sweet spot that they like at 10 to 15 yards between the numbers and the hash. We're looking at it and turning it down. We get short yardage situations where we're running flat and we're cutting the end man on line of scrimmage, and we got the back leaking out of the backfield on 3rd and 2. And we're hot because they blitz the Mike linebacker, and we're looking right at it, and we come off of it to work to the middle of the field, and we're hot, and we can't go. We don't have time to go through progressions, and that flat's open. So just basic stuff. They say he's day-to-day with a chest injury that he suffered against Seattle. I would guess he's probably the least likely quarterback to play, just because not only from an injury perspective, but from an execution standpoint, it was awful on Sunday in Seattle. So Tim Boyle's the other quarterback on the roster. We're waiting to see, as of when we're recording this, if the Dolphins are going to add another quarterback in some dynamic, but I'm expecting it's going to be Snoop Huntley.
Well, my question for you would be then, and no lie, Kyle, I watch your show quite a bit. Great stuff that you do there on Locked On Dolphins. I noticed you've been talking about wanting to see them to do something different. Do you think that if they do play Snoop Huntley at quarterback, that it will force Mike McDaniel to do things differently and maybe take advantage of his mobility? And that obviously worked against the Titans last week with Malik Willis, some of the design run stuff and his ability to scramble. Do you think that if they do play Snoop Huntley, which I agree, I think they should do you think Mike McDaniel would change to accommodate his skill set, or do you think it would be more the same of trying to run that offense?
I would hope so. And it feels like Mike McDaniel's answer to all of the problems right now is add more layers on top of what we're doing. And all that's really doing is adding more margin for error for individual players. and you don't have your starting quarterback who's the orchestrator of it, who it's all tailored for in the first place. So it was just this big recipe for disaster. And you're getting a lot when Miami takes their motions and they're trying to set up their wide zones and they're trying to change the numbers on either side of the center. They're getting a lot of safety rotation down into the motion, and you're getting a lot of unblocked hats to the strong side. Simultaneously, you're also getting fairly light box counts against Miami, whether they're in 12 or 11 personnel, or sometimes even in the 21 packages.
Right.
And you see the success that they have. They're capable based on the angles and the personnel, and the execution's been good, running duo and inside zone and gap schemes, and they run power and counter, and they're for 8, 9, 13 yards, and then it goes away because they try to go back to getting the wide zone working again. And I'm hoping with a quarterback that has an element of run game to his perspective, and he's only been here 2 weeks, you can strip down all that extra stuff. You can kind of say, hey, our gap schemes and in between the tackles running has been working. We can get an extra hat and an extra body to add an extra gap with the quarterback run game and see what that looks like, to just kind of see if it provides a spark, because that's really what they're looking for right now. 200 yards of offense and 3 points, despite starting on the plus side of the 50 twice against Seattle for an offense that was the number one offense in the league last year from a yardage perspective.
Yeah, that makes it tough. Well, if you want a spark, I got to tell you, playing the Titans is kind of a good way to find something. But I do want to ask you about the defensive side of the ball. So
yeah,
obviously Bradley Chubb banged up, Jalen Phillips getting back up to speed. I'm a big fan of Jalen Phillips. Just want to say I liked him so much coming out of college, even with the medical concerns there. But I think one of the biggest losses of the offseason for any team this year was losing Christian Wilkins on the interior for the Dolphins. Can you tell me basically how that loss has impacted the team, or maybe if I have overestimated how much that would do to the Dolphins pass rush?
Well, I don't know that you're underestimating Christian Wilkins and his value. I think there's a reason he's a $27.5 million a year player, right? He's
Right.
Outstanding talent. I would say of all the major personnel losses that they've incurred, and that would include Xavier Howard at corner. That would include Christian Wilkins at defensive tackle. That would include Robert Hunt at guard.
Yep. Connor Williams at center.
Connor Williams at center.
Injury based.
With Aaron Brewer kind of stepping in, who Titans fans know well.
Yes.
And then Andrew Van Ginkel on the edge. I would say Kendall Fuller, who's currently in concussion protocol. We don't know if he's going to play. And Calais Campbell have been the players that have been closest to providing comparative quality of play. So Campbell has come in. He made a number of splash plays in the first half against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the first game. And then I thought he was strong against Seattle with a lot of new on their interior offensive line. So it's not a glaring loss, but when they go rotation, and they have to go rotation more because Wilkins was a 90% snap taker,
right?
And Calais is not. He's 38 years old, right?
He's an older player. Yeah.
It gets into Deshaun Hand is kind of the third guy in the rotation, and then it's Brandon Peely or Benito Jones if they want to go odd fronts, and that's where you really feel Christian when they want to go with their bare fronts and cover up the 3 interior offensive linemen and stay in base. That's where you feel Christian the most and his absence the most. But I would definitely say from a new personnel and key places in this game, Fuller being in concussion protocol is a big question. It'll be interesting with the extra day, if that helps kind of clear that up a little bit. And then Terron Armstead on the other side of the ball is also in concussion protocol. So Miami's had a couple of head injuries here in the first month of the season that's kind of got some key players in bad spots.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate too, because, those other injuries will heal, but we obviously have a higher sensitivity to the head injuries that could really impact you long term. So hoping for health on both sides of the ball.
Yeah,
but obviously we both talked about some injury things that could impact the teams.
Yeah, and now it's kind of time to shift gears. We've set the table for both teams. What does a victory look like for either team in this game? And that's what we're going to go to next here on this Crossover Thursday. Make sure that you stick with us. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to check out the stats, view the live play-by-play. And the nice thing about Monday Night Football is there's only 2 games in town. I wish it was 1, but there's 2 games in town. So it's less distracting, which means you could get even more ingrained in the game with that hub on FanDuel. And it also happens to be the place that you can place your bets as well. Right now, the current spread on this game, Miami at home, favored by 1.5. The game total is 36.5. They're not expecting a lot of points, and I don't think that I blame them. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. That is FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Tyler, I've talked enough. Give us 3 keys to victory for Tennessee in this game.
Well, I think number one, they need to run the football. So Miami's run defense has actually been one of the better run defenses in the NFL. I believe they're top 12, top 13, like 112 yards allowed per game. But the Titans only ran the ball 11 times for 33 yards last week. And with how bad the pass protection is, that simply isn't good enough. Now, a lot of that had to do with game flow and the game script with the Packers getting up quite a bit. But this is a Brian Callahan thing. To me, this is a guy who is a pass-heavy guy. That's where he feels comfortable. And when things get kind of sketchy, he wants to go back to his comfort blanket, the quick timing passing game. The problem is you don't have Joe Burrow. You have Will Levis. And Levis has showed that he is much more comfortable in the play-action pass game. And I know that there are studies out there that show that you don't really need the run game to be successful to have success in play action.
It's nonsense.
But to me, it's not just a setting up the play action pass. It's putting your offensive line in less situations where it's just a pure drop back passing game. So the Titans have to find a way to run the football far better than they have in the second half of the first 2 games. Mm-hmm. And then in the full game last week, they have to be able to run the football better, not only because you look around the NFL, the run game is back. And Kyle, I know you're somebody who pays attention to not just what your team is doing, but NFL trends. And if you look with all the 2 high safety shells, people are looking to run the ball more. That's how you attack. And people are going to keep 2 safeties back deep. So I think the Titans have to run the football with more success. Also, on defense, they got to find a way to get pressure. You're playing against backup quarterbacks, and last week you didn't make Malik Willis work for it at all. He had a lot of clean pockets, and they gave up a lot of 3rd and longs, like I mentioned before, because they simply could not get pressure on the quarterback, something that I was worried about all season with Arden Key as a starter. Arden Key is not a starting edge in the NFL, and the Titans have not gotten enough interior pressure from Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat, like everybody in training camp and preseason said that they would. So the Titans have to find a way to get pressure on the quarterback, especially a backup quarterback, to make those mistakes happen. The Titans have not forced a turnover through 3 games, and the Denard Wilson defense is built on getting turnovers. That's what we've been told all season long. So you're not going to get turnovers if you don't get pressure on the quarterback. And quite frankly, I think the Titans need to blitz more. We heard from Denard Wilson that, Greg Williams and Todd Bowles are my big influences and stuff like that. Okay, well, those guys are blitz heavy guys, and the Titans are not in the top 10 in blitz percentage. The Dolphins blitz more than the Titans. The Titans have only blitzed 26.4%. So I think Denard Wilson needs to wake up and realize that his front 4 pass rushers are not going to get pressure on their own, and they need to dial up pressure and blitzes on 3rd downs to try to get to the quarterback more. And then finally, I keep saying this. It's kind of a running joke on my keys to victory that I keep saying this exact thing, but no big mistakes, please. Like no punt blocks, no stupid penalties that turn into points for the other offense, no pick sixes, no fumbles. Like the Titans just have to play a clean game. It's kind of crazy that the Titans have given up 25 points off turnovers. Mm-hmm. And if you count the punt block that went for a touchdown against Chicago, that's 31. And the Titans' margin of defeat right now is 30 points. There's your points. There's your margin. It's the turnover. So they got to be able to run the football. They got to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. And they can't have any silly, stupid turnovers. And if they do those, they should be a better team than this version of the Miami Dolphins. And if they don't do those things, they're going to find themselves at 0-4. And the season is truly over by the bye week.
Yeah. And for Miami, I think the biggest thing for me, and I mentioned red zone, situational red zone stuff last week against Seattle and said, well, your metrics, your scoring offensively, when you get into the red zone, it's not good. And then defensively, when other teams get in the red zone, it's really bad. And it got even worse. The Dolphins got inside the 10-yard line twice, came away with 3 points against Seattle. So if you get short fields, if they give you short fields, if you have a tip ball for an interception that starts on the 7-yard line, like what you dealt with this past week against Seattle, those have to be touchdowns, right? The Dolphins, 25% of their trips into the red zone have yielded touchdowns. They're 2 of 8 through 3 games. Defensively, 6 out of 7 opponent trips into the red zone have yielded touchdowns. That is 31st and 30th in the NFL. Like it could not be worse for you once you get into the red area. And that's where you look at potentially a quarterback that has some run game threat with Mike McDaniel and his background going back to Washington with RG3. And can you tap into those roots and get that extra hat in the run game? They're having a really hard time getting outside. They are averaging less than 2.7 yards per carry off the left and right end this season. All other gaps, it's over 4.4 yards per carry. But
that'll be extra interesting. Because the Titans are really good on the interior, but have sloppy edge play. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think that's another key one for Miami is getting the outside run game going. Whether that's Devon Achane, who has the dominant workload for you thus far. Jalen Wright looked really good in a couple of carries the past 2 weeks, but hasn't got a lot of volume as a rookie. How can you ignite that spark to get outside and get on the edge and test Tennessee's ability to tackle? You mentioned some of the tackling from this past week. That's a big thing. You've got speed. You've got playmakers. They like to run these perimeter screens. Jalen Waddle stopping and cutting back into the backs of his blockers instead of just getting north and trying to force a tackle and challenge somebody with an angle and trying to run through it. He's trying to find more green grass. So that's another one for Miami is finding the winning plays on the perimeter have not been there. Even if it's the running game, if it's the screen game, if it's quarterback run game, whatever it looks like. The Dolphins have to get that going. And I would say their early down success is especially critical. They kind of turned their nose up at it. This past week against Seattle, they had those successes running the ball between the tackles, and then they got away from it. And there were some negative plays on the outside, and then you're in 3rd and longs with backup quarterback play. Tyler, the Dolphins were 1 of 15 on 3rd and 4th down combined against Seattle. They're at 32% for the season on 3rd and 4th down combined. They're 1 of 10 on 4th down in 3 games. You got to get those short situations and give yourself as big of a menu as you possibly can to call plays that give you a chance to convert those and convert that into continuing to possess the football. If the Dolphins can do those things, you're going to give yourself a chance to win a football game that's probably going to be a low-scoring, tight to the vest game. But if not, then that's going to feed more into Tennessee's pathway to victory as well.
Well, we're looking at 2 teams that are definitely desperate for a win to keep their season alive. And I think that you're going to see that desperation in the play calling. Personally, I think we're going to see both these teams literally pulling out everything they can to try to get this win.
Yep. I don't know that it'll be pretty, but it should be entertaining, and it will be on primetime Monday Night Football. So that's going to do it for us and our crossover for all of your post-game Titans needs. Tyler has you covered over on Locked On Titans. For Dolphins perspective, Locked On Dolphins, it's your teams every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. You can find these shows and all of our shows on the Locked On Network on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Make it a great rest of your day and enjoy the football that is coming this weekend.